I recently put out a short where I looked at 3 VS Code tips for beginners, and on that video there were a lot of comments from people saying that they've been using VS Code for a long time and they didn't know about all of them. So a longer form video today where we're going to look at 7 different VS Code tips and shortcuts that are going to let you work faster and boost your productivity. Hello my front-end friends, thank you so much for coming back for yet another video. And if you're new here, my name is Kevin and usually I help you fall in love with CSS, but today we're going to be upping our productivity game, specifically looking at VS Code. And I'm also going to show you one change I've made to my setup in VS Code that I was really skeptical of at first, but now that I'm getting used to it, I sort of actually like it. Alright, so here we are in VS Code, and let's say we have this setup here where we've created a bit of a layout, and you created 4 rows, so you're using a 12 column grid. I have this thing set up, span 3, whatever, it works. It's a little sort of like Bootstrap. But then the design changes and I have to get rid of one of these. And that means I need to change these guys to span 4s. Well, what I can do is I can select the word span 3, and then I can push Control D on my keyboard and it's going to select the next one. And then I can push it again and it selects the next one. And then I can change that over to a span 4, just like that. Now you might be wondering, could I just select the number 3 and then do it? But you have to be careful with this because it's going to match anything that matches your selection. So if I only select the 3 and then I push Control D, it's now choosing the 3 here in my H3. It'll choose the closing one over there as well. So we do need to be a little bit careful and in general select the entire thing that you want to change rather than just one of them. And the nice thing with this is because it goes one at a time, if you do have span 3 somewhere else that you don't want to change, that's not a big deal. Now, let's say you did want to change every instance of something. So say these rounded classes that I put in here, and I'm looking specifically at HTML now just because it covers a lot of bases, but this would work in any language that you're writing. But here where I have the word rounded, maybe I realized that throughout my entire site, I used rounded when I was writing my HTML, and I should have used round. The class in my CSS is round, not rounded. So what you can do if you want to select every instance of it is use a Control-Shift-L. And when you do a Control-Shift-L, you'll see it selected all 3 of these here. But if I scroll up, you'll also see it selected all these ones here. So any instance of it in this document will be selected. And then I can go and change that over to round instead. Now, sometimes when I'm making changes to different things, I need to change an entire line. So say, let's just say this image, I want to get rid of the entire thing. I have this habit of clicking. So one thing is if you click once, it places your cursor. So I think we already know that. You just place your cursor. If I double click, it will select a word, and it doesn't matter where you are, double clicking will always select a word, and 3 times clicking will select an entire line. And if you just want to select everything, you can do 4 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it will select everything. I'm used to this from like design software that I've used that also has that. But if you don't want to have your hand on the mouse, and a real nice way to up your productivity within VS Code is not to have to rely on the mouse. The less you use it, the faster you'll work. And so what you can actually do is when you have your cursor in the right place is you can do a Control-L and that will also select the entire line. So just to show you here, I can come over to this container, Control-L, it selects that. I come over to this image, Control-L, and it selects that entire image. Now this will always select one single line of code. So if you do have something like this, it's breaking over multiple lines. If I come here and I push Control-L, it will only have that line selected. But it does bring the cursor down over to here, so I can push Control-L again, and I can just keep on going and selecting one line at a time by pressing it over and over again. Another one that's really cool that I usually forget about, but it could be useful sometimes, is let's say I need to come in between these two. And if my cursor's here, obviously I can just push enter and it brings me down. That's not a big deal. And interestingly, you can also do a Control-Enter, and that will also bring you one line down. But another thing you can do, and this can be really useful because say your cursor's already here and you want to add a line, what I usually do is push enter and then push up on my keyboard and whatever, it's not that bad, I guess. But another way you can do it is a Control-Shift-Enter or Control-Shift-Return, and you'll see it makes that new line, but it leaves the cursor on the line where it just was. So let's do that again. I'll come over here, Control-Shift-Return. Or enter, and you can see that my cursor is right here and I can start writing there. So we're creating a new line, but leaving our cursor where it was, which can be kind of handy. One of the things that I do use a lot, and I actually have a custom shortcut set up for myself on this one, but we'll look at the default shortcut. And let's say you have a setup like this, you have your div that has a bunch of stuff in it and you need to duplicate that. You could obviously come and copy that and then come and push return and then paste it there. And not the end of the world, I guess, but a much faster way to accomplish the same thing is you make your selection. And of course, we could come here and do Control L and select everything there. So I never take my hand off the keyboard. And then I can push an Alt, Shift, and down, and it's going to duplicate exactly what I have underneath my selection. Or let's undo that, and I can do a Alt, Shift, and up, and that's going to duplicate it, but upwards instead of downwards. So you can do that with any selection. So if I just select this, Alt Shift up and it does it up, or an Alt Shift down and it does it downward. Now I did mention as much as possible, we don't want to take our hand off the keyboard because we're doing our typing. That every time you have to take your hand off the keyboard to go to the mouse to move things around, it's not necessarily ideal. But you can say like, how can I actually navigate things? I don't want to have to like scroll up and scroll down this way. But if I hold Control down on my keyboard, I can actually scroll up and scroll down. So I can scroll up my document to move up. So if I'm just looking really fast through something on here, I don't have to take my hands off the keyboard. The only thing is if I do want to then like place my cursor here, I will have to come and click. But just to say that you don't have to take your hand off, scroll up and down that way. You can do scrolling within a document just with Control up and down to move around a little bit. And the last thing we're going to look at is something that I actually got from another YouTube channel, which is CSS Weekly's newish YouTube channel. And he put up some VS Code tips and sort of changes to make to your setup. And that one is to move the sidebar to the right side over here instead of having the sidebar on the left. And the reason he explained that, and I think he got the tip from somewhere else, but it's when you open and close it, the code doesn't jump around. So you can be working, open it, get whatever file you want. But the nice thing is, whether it's open or closed, this is never changing. If we have it on the other side, you can change it just by when it's opened, right-clicking on it and going move primary sidebar to the left. And now it's here. And every time I open and close it, everything jumps and moves around. So sometimes you open your file, then you go to close it. And the shortcut I'm using is something I looked at in a previous video, which is Control B. And so yeah, when you get your file you want, you find where you're working, you're doing a little bit, and you go, why is this open? You close it. Not a big change. I will say when you first do it, it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. But again, right click, move primary sidebar right, and then it moves over to the right. And yeah, it's taken me a little bit of time to get used to it, but it's something that I'm getting used to now. And now that I'm getting used to it, I kind of like it. And if you liked these tips and you'd like to know more other ways you can improve your VS Code setup or more tricks and stuff, I've previously looked at things like extensions as well as other shortcuts and things like that. And I'd also really recommend checking out that video over on CSS Weekly. So all of those are right here for your viewing pleasure. And with that, a very big thank you to my supporters of Awesome over on Patreon, Jan, Johnny, Stewart, and Tim, as well as all my other patrons for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner on the internet just a little bit more awesome.